by inviting Montenegro into the alliance and solidifying its place in the Euro-Atlantic community of security and of values, and by reaffirming also the open door policy of NATO. My government looks forward to working with Montenegro's leadership in the months ahead leading up to the Warsaw Summit in July on the accession process itself. Now, it is no secret that NATO faces a series of security challenges from all directions, from the Syrian civil war and the influx of migrants, refugees, to the vile threat that is posed by Daesh, which has been more immediate in this city, in Paris, and in other places, to the still unsettled conflict in Ukraine. So as a result, NATO has to be able to respond to each of these dangers and to more, which is why it matters so much that our alliance continues to speak with a single voice. Since this alliance was formed more than 6 decades ago, a lot of people have tried to divide us. But our meetings over the last 2 days make clear once again our unity and our resolve remains strong. And just as we have for nearly 70 years, NATO allies will stand together to meet any challenge to our collective security. On Syria and on Daesh, every alliance member expressed clear backing for the efforts of the International Syria Support Group in order to facilitate Syrian-led negotiations for a ceasefire and for political transition in keeping with the Geneva communiques, and also in order to isolate and defeat the terrorists. Nothing would do more to cut the legs from beneath Daesh than success in de-escalating the war in Syria and bringing closer the day when refugees from that battered land can return to their homes, to their communities. Yesterday, I also called on every NATO ally to step up its support for the fight against Daesh, striking at the organization's core in Syria and Iraq, strangling its effort to set up networks elsewhere, and defending our ally, Turkey, and other countries in the region, Jordan and Lebanon particularly. I was very gratified that a number of allies are already bringing more to this battle or are planning to increase their contributions. And yesterday, we also reaffirmed our commitment to maintain a persistent presence on NATO's eastern edge, deploying forces on land, sea, and air to provide assurance, as we have called it. Nothing that is offensive, but defensive in order to strengthen people's sense of security. I am gratified to see the alliance standing 28 for 28 in this mission. On Ukraine, I reinforced President Obama's call at the G20 summit for Russia to fully implement the Minsk commitments, including the withdrawal of heavy weapons, elections in Donbass under Ukraine's constitution and under the monitoring of the OSCE, removal of all foreign fighters, release of hostages, and restoration of Ukrainian control over its side of the international border. It is very clear, and President Obama made this very clear to President Putin in our personal meeting with him in Paris just 2 days ago, that if Moscow wants relief from sanctions, as we have said previously, it's there for the getting if you simply live up to the promises that have been made, implement Minsk, and this can be achieved. On Afghanistan, alliance ministers discussed the progress of the Resolute Support mission and the need for increased investment and long-term backing for Afghan security forces. And we discussed the significant steps that the Afghan forces have taken to assume responsibility themselves for the security operations of Afghanistan, and notwithstanding a several-day propaganda initiative in Kunduz, they fought back valiantly, retook the city, and they are continuing to expand their capacity and to broaden their abilities on a national basis. We also talked about the importance of maintaining a productive across-the-board partnership with the government in Kabul and the citizens of that country. On the urgent task of deterring and meeting threats, allies must fulfill commitments that are made at the NATO summit in Wales, most notably through the Readiness Action Plan and the pledge to restore and to work to restore the budgets of the NATO countries to the standard of 2% of GDP. This ministerial saw progress towards these goals, but I have to say that work still remains to be done in order to keep everybody on the right trajectory. Last, the United States affirmed our strong support for NATO's ongoing efforts to strengthen its own capacity to combat hybrid warfare, terrorism, and cyber threats, and to do this in close collaboration with the EU. Now, as you can tell, there was obviously a lot on the agenda over the last couple of days, and there are more challenges, needless to say, that will demand our collective attention and our action. I leave NATO today, however, confident that as allies, we will continue to meet these challenges together. I thought there was great unanimity, a strong sense of mutual purpose, and everybody seized by the importance of making it clear to the citizens of each of our countries that we know what we have to do and we are going to do it. And that is a commitment that I felt was restated by every single minister there and in every single meeting. There was a clarity of purpose and a determination that we are going to defeat the efforts by these nihilistic, semi-criminal, not semi, completely criminal, and totally abhorrent activities that are challenging civil life itself. Finally, let me just add that I came to Brussels from Paris, where we kicked off a remarkable gathering of global leaders. I don't think I can ever remember a time when more than 150 leaders of nations, heads of state, have come together in one place for the purpose of furthering an issue of concern to all of them. The COP21 climate negotiations are critical. They represent one of the great security challenges of the world, as well as environmental challenges, as well as energy challenges, as well as health challenges, as well as moral obligations. And these talks, I thought, got off to an encouraging start. They will be difficult. And over the past couple of days, the United States has announced a package of initiatives to complement an agreement and continue demonstrating our commitment to working with our international partners, including the most vulnerable among us, in order to address the global threat of climate change. We announced a contribution of $51 million to the Least Developed Countries Fund, which is part of a nearly $250 million donation from a combined 11 countries. We announced $30 million in contributions to the regional risk insurance funds. We joined 19 countries in committing to double our own clean energy R&D budget in the next 5 years. That will take us up to $10 billion of R&D. That's a very, very significant effort. And alongside the 25 major investors led by Bill Gates, who pledged billions of dollars in private capital for clean energy innovations. Nothing stands to provide as much opportunity, as much possibility for addressing climate change rapidly and successfully than to have breakthroughs on the energy frontier. And I believe that the private sector and Our innovators and entrepreneurs have a very special capacity and a very special obligation, and they have accepted it to help make the difference in this effort. Also, there is an initiative led by India and announced by Prime Minister Modi, which we welcomed and joined into, in which we joined 100 other countries in a new international solar alliance in order to expand the use and development of solar energy in every corner of the globe. And I'm pleased to say that in the United States in the last years, we have increased our use of solar energy by 20 times and increased our use of wind energy by 3 times. And we continue to be committed to move down that path of transition. The fact is that the world has made a remarkable amount of progress over the past year alone. When I first went to China 2 years ago, we engaged in negotiations, and a year ago, President Obama was able to stand up with President Xi and announce that together we were going to encourage countries to announce their intended national determined contributions, their reductions in emissions. I don't think any of us were certain that we would see 183 commitments, 184 commitments to that effect before the negotiations even began. But that is where we are. More than 180 nations representing more than 90% of global emissions have come forward with their individual reduction targets. So the message is crystal clear. The world is ready to act on climate change, even if individual politicians or individual parties in certain places are unwilling to do so. The world is ready, and the world demands that we act. So the stage is set for genuinely productive negotiations. Our team is on the ground there now. I'm in touch with them daily, and I will return to Paris next Sunday in order to continue to push through the end of it for an inclusive, durable, transparent agreement that will meet the moment and put all of us on the path towards a safer and more sustainable future. So with that, I thank you, and I'm delighted to take a few questions.
Our first question today will come from Arshad Mohammed from Reuters.
Secretary Kerry, my question is about the fight against Islamic State, both in Syria and Iraq. Leaving aside the British parliamentary vote today and the German commitments yesterday, what tangible commitments did you get from other NATO partners to fight Islamic State in Syria? And on Iraq, Prime Minister Abadi issued a fairly ambiguous statement yesterday about the planned U.S. Special Ops deployment, saying didn't see a need for ground troops. He would have to approve any deployments. Was he fully consulted about this? Would he have to approve movements of the Special Operations Forces in Iraq? And can you live with those kinds of constraints?
Well, the answer, let me take the first part first. We're very pleased with the efforts by Prime Minister Cameron to go to the Parliament and to ask for the right for Great Britain to join us in striking against ISIL in Syria. This is a very important step. We applaud his leadership on it. I hope that the Parliament will vote to grant that, because it is important for the world to join together in this initiative, and we welcome Germany's efforts. I just met with Foreign Minister Steinmeier, who has just left here to go back to Berlin in order to speak to this issue in the Bundestag later today, and we welcome Germany's efforts to contribute to this. Other nations are indeed stepping up and considering exactly what they will do. There are a number of countries, and I need to let them have the space to go back and speak to their parliaments and talk with their leadership. But they are committed to be helpful in various different ways. We have asked for the participation of special forces, of people to provide police training, people to provide ammo, military assistance. People can provide enablers. There are various ways in which countries can contribute. They don't have to necessarily be troops engaged in kinetic action. There are medical facilities. There are other assets that could be deployed. There is intelligence gathering. There is all kinds of support structures necessary to this kind of endeavor, whether it's flying refueling or flying defensive. There are many things that countries can do. And a number of countries will leave here today prepared to go back to consult with their governments, and we will be in touch with them on a military-to-military basis as well as diplomatic basis in order to secure additional help in this effort. What I was impressed by, and in fact moved by, was the absolute broad-based understanding that Daesh represents not a threat just to Syria or to Jordan or to Turkey, Lebanon, but Daesh is now a proven reality and a threat throughout the world, because any one person has the ability with certain instructions, if they're prepared to go die, to unfortunately do great harm in that process. We've seen that in many different places. So we are all engaged in this effort. Countries can help us with traveler information, with exchange of information, and other kinds of security efforts and initiatives with respect to public events and security, travel, migration, and so forth. So we are anticipating that there will be a very constructive response to this and over the days ahead. With respect to Iraq, the government of Iraq was, of course, briefed in advance of Secretary Carter's announcement, and we will continue to work very, very closely with our Iraqi partners on exactly who would be deployed, where they would be deployed, what kinds of missions people would undertake, how they would support Iraqi efforts to degrade and destroy ISIL. We have full and total respect and work for Prime Minister Abadi's leadership. We work very closely with him, and we strongly support his efforts to restore Iraq's sovereignty and territorial integrity against ISIL attacks. And I can assure you that as the plans are developed, it will be in full consultation and with the full consent of the Iraqi government. And I have no doubt that this announcement should be viewed entirely in the context of what we have announced a year ago. It's the same mission, not a different one, but we need to provide greater assistance in ways that meet with the Iraqis' both consent and needs.
Our second